There we go. So we are recording. So I will let everybody in. Good evening, everyone. We'll just give you a few seconds to connect to audio and settle in here. And we may have a few more folks joining as we start to go forward. So if you hear some pings and dings, that's coming from me as more folks join our webinar today. Looks like everyone who's in the waiting room is in, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jenny Kosak, and I'm Community Engagement Coordinator for the City of West Allis. Thank you for joining us for our webinar tonight. We're doing one monthly webinar each month this year to try to connect residents with city services and city staff and help residents learn more about what we do and how we can help. Just a few bits of housekeeping before we dive into the presentation. This event is being recorded. To make the most of your experience and reduce the use of bandwidth, please close any other open applications on your device. If you have questions throughout the webinar, you can drop them in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any questions that are specific to your situation, you can certainly contact us after the webinar to get those answers. Watch your inbox in the next few days. We're going to send a survey your way, and we want your feedback about tonight's presentation, so please keep an eye out for that. And I'm very excited tonight to introduce Ed Lazinski. Ed is a lifelong West Allis resident and the director of the Department of Building Inspection and Neighborhood Services. He grew up in the trades working for his dad and is a professional engineer, master plumber, commercial and residential building inspector, and certified building official. He serves on numerous local, state, and national building code and building inspection related boards and committees. In his spare time, Ed loves watching baseball and most other sports, hiking, hunting, and traveling. And with that, Ed, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks everybody for being here, and hopefully you get a lot of your questions answered and a lot of great information out of this. So this is actually a presentation I've done a couple times at the NARI Home Show, the Spring Home Show. So when I first wrote this presentation, it's actually somewhat generic for any municipality in the area, but I have customized it down a little bit more just to be more West Allis specific. But I did leave in some of those references just because you may be talking to somebody from another municipality, another city nearby here in southeastern Wisconsin. You might be talking about this. You may tell them to come over here and check this out as well. And so I do want to give some of that general area information. Same thing, you may move out of the city and wind up somewhere else. So just providing as much information on that as I can. So we'll jump in there. Let's see. And Jenny, I think you need to allow me screen sharing.
Yes, give me just 1 second. I will do so. All right, give it a whirl.
All right, perfect. And let's see, do you guys see the presentation now?
Yep, we're all set.
All right, awesome. So again, this is Ask Ed, why you need permits, building codes, and all of your questions answered. So introduction, here's everything that we're going to cover today. It looks like a lot. I've only got an hour. I do sometimes tend to talk pretty quick. So if I gloss over something, again, I'll give you my contact information at the end. Feel free to reach out to me at any time with any sort of questions or anything that you might have. So we've got a lot to cover, but it's all on, why do we need permits? How do I get permits? What does and doesn't require permits? How do you apply for permits? What do I expect with the inspections? What happens if something goes wrong? What problems may come up in a remodeling project? So this is also mostly just focused for residential properties. So some things in here will correlate over to commercial properties, but this is a little bit more geared towards homeowners and property owners doing residential projects. So part one, why do we need permits? Well, basically, it does provide a level of assurance that your project is designed in a safe manner and that it should meet building, electric, plumbing, and mechanical and zoning codes. There's a lot of codes out there, and they're constantly changing. So you may, hear from a contractor who comes in and says, "Hey, I've been building this way for 30 years. I know what I'm doing." Well, you might not still be able to build that way. Codes are always evolving, always changing, and we'll get into that a little bit later on as to why. But by getting a permit and going through a plan review process, you're making sure that you're meeting those current codes. The plan review and permit process, it's the cheapest way to fix a violation. If you think about it, if you draw out a little plan and you say, "Hey, I'm going to put a wall here," and we say, "Yeah, you can't put that wall there. You got to slide it over a foot." It's a lot easier to fix when it's on paper rather than after you've built it, after it's all studded in, electric's running to it. You want to start drywalling it, and the inspector comes in and says, "Nope, now you got to move that wall another foot." We want to catch this stuff as quick as we can. So that's why we go through a plan review process before issuing permits. We want your family and visitors to be safe in your home. We want the next person that buys your home to be safe in it. And that's really the best way to ensure that, not just, like I said, not just for you, but you think about all the people who may live in your home after you've sold it. Continuing on with why we need permits, it keeps your contractors honest, and it protects your largest investment. Some contractors, they'll do anything. There are some shady contractors out there. Most of them are good. I'm not giving contractors a bad name by any means. Most of them are pretty good, but there can be some shadier ones out there, and they could compromise safety, and reduce costs that way. So it's a great way to protect you from those contractors. The permit inspection process, it helps to make sure that the contractor's meeting codes and that your house is going to be safe when it's finished. And again, this is probably your largest personal investment that you're ever going to have in your life is your home. So permits make sure that any work done to it will enhance that investment and protect it. Another thing, insurance companies, they do not like it when you start doing work without permits. So if you have some illegal work in your house and something goes wrong with that, you could end up voiding your entire homeowner's policy. Continuing on, still more reasons as to why we need permits. Basically, it's the law. Homeowners are required to get permits for remodeling work. Homeowners are required to disclose if any work was done. So when you do go to sell your house, you have to sign a statement on there in Wisconsin that says that you do or that you either that you did have permits for everything or that you did not have permits for some work, and that could turn away a potential buyer if they see that on there. Maybe not right now in the current real estate market. It's pretty crazy out there, but it is possible once things get back down to normal. And again, if you hire somebody and they don't get permits, it's ultimately on the homeowner. The homeowner is the one who's ultimately responsible to get permits. If we'll get into some of the consequences later on, but if permits are needed to be pulled and they weren't, and we end up in court, we don't bring in the contractor, we bring in the homeowner. So what exactly are building codes? Building codes are a minimum set of rules and guidelines that, when followed, provide a reasonable level of safety. Building codes are designed to protect the health, welfare, and safety of anyone in a built environment. I describe this to people all the time, especially when I'm doing talks to some of the kids' schools and youth groups and stuff. If you've ever successfully walked into a building and then successfully walked back out, you've got building codes and building permits and building inspectors to thank for that. If the roof didn't fall on your head when you were in there, you didn't get electrocuted when you tried to turn on a light switch, you had fresh water to drink, clean air to breathe, all those types of things. If you were able to do that, you walked into a building and walked back out, you've got inspectors to thank for that in building codes. But keep in mind that building codes are basically a minimum safety standard. That's a D- grade. So we'll get contractors all the time who says, I strictly build to the codes. It's like, well, that's great, but you're doing just enough to keep people safe then. So, a lot of building codes are built that way of this is your bottom line. You have to do this to keep people safe. So we encourage people to build a little bit more above and beyond codes, but it's not necessary. That's all we're looking for, is just to make sure that people are safe in there. Codes are developed through the years of practical application. So when things go wrong, codes get changed to protect people. There's natural disasters, construction technology, different lifestyles that all get factored into this. So you think about out in California and Oregon, some of those wildfires that are coming up right now over the last couple of years, those have changed building codes out there quite a bit. New technology, I promise you, the way a house was built 100 years ago is nothing like how it was built 50 years ago, which is probably nothing like it was built 5 years ago. There's new tools, there's new material technology, LED lights come in, there's all sorts of energy savings. All these things will also affect the codes. So codes have to get changed to kind of go with what's easier for the contractors and what types of new materials and methods they're seeing out there. And then just different lifestyles of people. You think about some of these old houses where it's just walls everywhere and everything's got doors, and now you're starting to see a lot more open concept houses. People are knocking down walls between the kitchen and the dining room and the living room. They want everything to be open and a little bit more spacious. So again, different lifestyles of people is going to change how codes are developed as well. I didn't mention it, but COVID is also going to be, I think, at least on the commercial building side, a big factor in code changes coming up. So how long have we had building codes? Well, the first written codes were developed around 1770 BC. So quite a while ago. That's the Code of Hammurabi, which you may have heard of. That's eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth type of thing. It was basically developed where, if you build a house for somebody and it falls down, well, you have to go rebuild that house for them out of your own pocket. If it falls down and it kills the owner's son, then your son you have to go rebuild the house first, and then you have to give him your son to go work on his farm. And if it falls down and kills the owner, I think you had to rebuild it, and then they're going to kill you after it. All kind of morbid, but that's how those first building codes were really built. And that's, I don't really get into this, but that's basically the definition of a performance code. You've got two kind of types of codes, and this is getting a little bit technical for you, but you've got prescriptive codes and performance codes. Prescriptive codes are basically like a cookie cutter approach where you're just saying, if you put 2x4 walls and 2x8 rafters and a 2x6 floor, you're good to go. A performance code on the other side is basically just saying, hey, as long as you build it so it doesn't fall down, we don't really care how you do it, but it's got to meet that level of performance where it doesn't fall down. That's sort of performance codes. But again, that's a little bit technical for you, but that's the easy version of it. But Wisconsin had the first statewide building code in 1914. In 1980, Wisconsin developed their very first statewide residential code. So it's very important to know if your house was built prior to or before or after, I should say, June 1st, 1980. That's a very important date with building codes. So any house that was built after June 1st, 1980, if your house was built in 82, if your house was built in 98, if your house was built last month, it has to follow the state building code. There is a uniform dwelling code for the state of Wisconsin. Every single house that was built after June 1st, on or after June 1st, 1980, has to follow that code, and municipalities cannot change that code. So you figure that's any house now that's about 41 years old. If you build it in West Allis, it's got to be the same as you build it in Superior, and it's got to be the same as you build it in La Crosse. Anywhere that you go in the state, that house has to follow the exact same code. We can't make it more restrictive. We can't make it less restrictive. That's the code, and that's all we can do. If your house was built prior to that, though, so if your house was built in the 1940s, in the 1920s, anything like that, even up to January 1st of 1980, then municipalities basically can come up with whatever they want, essentially. for building codes to govern those types of houses for when you're remodeling those. The way that the majority of the municipalities around here have done that, we've down here in southeastern Wisconsin, we've kind of come up with a guide that most municipalities around here have adopted, which is basically just trying to not make it worse, than what you have. So again, we pretty much follow that here in West Allis, most of the other municipalities around. So we're all pretty much on the same page with it. I know somebody brought that up in one of the questions when they were registering for this webinar, just about, does West Allis have different codes? And really we don't. Again, from 1980 on, by state law, we're not allowed to have different codes. Prior to that, I actually write, I'm the chairman of the committee that writes the code that most of the people in southeastern Wisconsin use. So we follow it here. So there's really no difference from what we do to any other municipality around. And just one last note on there, that Wisconsin is the only state which does not follow the International Residential Code. So we are the only state right now with our own residential building code. So how do codes get developed? A lot of people might be curious on that. So the Dwelling Code Council is a group formed in Wisconsin here by the governor. It's appointed by the governor, and that has builders, designers, code officials, just regular citizens are on there. A whole bunch of people come together. Anyone in the state, or actually really anyone anywhere, can suggest a code change, and that goes to that committee. They kind of analyze it, see if this is worth entering into the code, but they're only an advisory group, so they can't actually write the code. They would come up with a whole bunch of different recommendations, say, hey, these are things that we think you should include into the code. They would pass that along to the lawmakers in the state, so the senators and the assembly. They can take the recommendations and say, yep, let's go with it. They can just throw it out the window and say, no, we're not interested. They can come up with their own rules as well, which happens a lot. So that at that point, it just goes into effect just like any other law. It's got to get approval of the Senate, approval of the Assembly, and then it goes to the governor to sign into law. And again, those are only for houses that are on or after June 1st, 1980. Anything before West Allis, we can come up with, like I said, essentially whatever rules we want to come up with for it. So that's sort of the introduction of what are codes and how do we have codes and why do we have codes. Now we'll get into permits. Now we know that there's codes and they're really super important, and we all want to follow the codes. And so how do we do that? So when do I need a permit? Again, whether you're dealing with West Allis, you're dealing with any other municipality around, just contact your local municipality to see what work does and doesn't require permits. While they do set that code that has to be followed for June 1st, 1980 on, they don't actually set what needs a permit at the state level. That's done by the municipalities as well. The only permit that's absolutely required, no matter what, is for a new house. So you absolutely have to have that permit, but after that, whatever remodeling gets done inside that house, the municipality gets to set that on their own. So, and that also goes for things that are outside of the house. So garages, pools, fences, sheds, decks, things like that. That's also all set by the municipality. So most municipalities, though, are going to require permits for work other than minor repairs or cosmetic work. Again, we're all kind of linked in together here in southeastern Wisconsin. We all stay somewhat consistent. There are a few little, differences between a few of the municipalities. Usually that's based off of staff size, political climate certainly falls into that a little bit, and just basically time. Do they have time to go out there and look at all these different projects? I know some of the municipalities around here, I was just talking to one of them a little bit farther out west, and they have, I think, 300 new houses getting built this year, and they have one building inspector. So that inspector is pretty much just going to be looking at brand new houses. They're not going to have time to go, check out if somebody's fence is you know, up to code. So again, the municipalities around there get to set what they're looking for. So typically what work does not require permits, and again, it can change for different municipalities, but non-structural repairs usually, you know, if you punch a little hole into a drywall, or you know, your carpet gets you know, bare in a few spots, little repairs like that, we're not going to get permits for any of that stuff. Replacement of outlet switches or lights for electrical. In West Allis, the way that the code's written, you're actually permitted to change up to 5 of those per year. But again, you know, if you do 6, we're really not going to know. Or if you've lived in your house for 2 years and you've done 10 of them, we don't know if you did 5 the one year, 5 the next, and we got other issues. So we're really not going to chase you down on something like that. So flooring and tiling, that stuff typically does not require any permits. Painting, wallpapering, replacement of hardwares and hardware on your cabinets, or even the cabinets themselves, a lot of times don't require permits. In West Allis, if you're replacing your cabinets themselves, we really don't get permits for that. Replacing appliances, and I'm talking about stoves, refrigerators, things like that. Dishwashers, garbage disposals, those typically you will need to get permits for that, because those are hardwired in and also connected in with the plumbing. So those we do want to take a look at. Adding insulation, landscaping, that doesn't require any permits. Patios, sidewalks, driveways, those types of things. I know there were a couple questions about that stuff. Again, on residential properties, you can go right ahead and do that here in West Allis. Technically, you could you know, pave your entire lot from lot line to lot line, paint it green, and you never have to cut your grass ever again. Might be kind of ugly. You might get some irritated neighbors, but you don't need permits. You don't need approvals for that type of stuff. And then small sheds here in West Allis, under 150 square feet. So you can do basically a 10 by 15 shed, which to me is not a small shed. That's a pretty big shed. But that's where our cutoff is. So anything 150 square feet or more, I should say over 150 square feet, we do get a permit for that. If you do that 10 by 15 or anything smaller, no permits are required here in West Allis for that. This next group here is kind of hit or miss wherever you're around. Some municipalities do, some municipalities don't. So I put in all the West Allis answers for you. So replacing plumbing fixtures, yes, in West Allis, if you're replacing plumbing fixtures, pulling off a toilet, putting on a new one, taking off a sink, putting on a new one, we do require permits for that. As a homeowner, though, you are allowed to do replacement fixtures here in West Allis. So we have a kind of a cheaper plumbing permit fee. You don't have to hire a contractor. You don't have to do that, as long as you're just replacing it in place from where it is. So you take a toilet off, you put a new toilet on. I think it's $25. We'll come out there, take a quick look at it, make sure it's not done incorrectly. And we're just kind of in and out of there really quick. But re-roofing, most municipalities around here, they do require permits for re-roofing. We don't here in West Allis. Same thing with re-siding. You don't need a permit here in West Allis. Most of the other places around you do. Window and door replacement, if it's the same size windows and doors, or replacement windows and doors, we don't need to get permits for that. The one time that we will, you know, if you're making windows smaller, like significantly smaller, there are sometimes light and ventilation requirements that are required for inside your, especially bedrooms, so that you get natural light and natural ventilation. You can open them up. So if you do go with a smaller window, that's where we do sometimes want to take a look at that, make sure that you're still good there. Also, a lot of times your windows are your second means of egress. That's how you're going to climb out of your bedroom in the event of a fire. So again, when you start going smaller, sometimes we want to take a look at some of that stuff. Same thing with doors. You know, there's minimum door width requirements. So if you start going smaller with doors, you know, you may start to run into some code issues. And again, on those, even if you go bigger, there's a header, a structural header that goes over that window or door. So if you do start going bigger or wider, that header's got to get replaced, and now you're starting to mess with some of the structural elements of your house. So we do want to take a look at that. But again, Same size windows and door replacement, we don't need a permit for it. Replacing a dishwasher, garbage disposal, like I mentioned earlier, yes, you do need permits for that. Larger sheds, same thing, 150 square feet over that, then yes. Swimming pools, if you have a 75 square foot swimming pool or bigger, then we do need permits for that in West Allis. So those smaller, temporary ones that you put up in the summer, you usually have like that inflatable ring that goes around the top, and you fill it up with water, and then the sides just start to go up. We don't need permits for that stuff. Now, if you are putting in a swimming pool and you don't have an outlet outside and you have to add an outlet, then you're getting into an electric permit. So you would need it for that. But the pool itself, you really wouldn't get a permit for. Replacing drywall, yes. If you have more than like a sheet of drywall, then we do want to take a look at that just to make sure then that the structural inside there is good. Again, if you have a little bit here and a little bit there of just patchwork for drywall, we're probably not going to know, and we really don't care that much. But we really want to get it. If you're going to gut the entire house down to nothing and then re-drywall it all, we want to take a look at that structural that's in there and make sure that that's still sound for you. And then small decks or small stair replacements, we don't get permits for stair replacements, outside of the building in West Allis. But if you have a deck that's over 25 square feet, then we do. So you can do small, 5 foot by 5 foot decks or 4 by 6. So you sort of have that landing outside the door. That we don't care about. You can do that without a permit. But if you start getting into larger decks, wood decks, then we would get permits for that. So what does get permits? Well, that's pretty much anything bigger than what I was just describing. So additions to your house, remodeling kitchens and bathrooms, adding a rec room in the basement, replacing furnaces, water heaters, air conditioners, brand new garages, building bigger porches and decks. I had it on here again because this is a presentation that I give for a bunch of different municipalities, but foundation repair. Everywhere other than West Allis, you do need permits for that. In West Allis, we don't get permits for that. And that's where, where you're excavating this out, putting in, they'll put in like new columns and beams and stuff in the basement to kind of stiffen up those foundation walls. We stay out of that. We consider that a repair, so not something that we need to get a permit for. And then replacing, adding, or enlarging an electric service, major electric work, major plumbing work, those types of things, we do want to get permits for that. So who can apply for a permit? So in Wisconsin, a homeowner who resides at a property or who's going to reside at the property once the construction's done can pull their own building permits. Sometimes, you buy a house and, you're going to do a bunch of work before you move in. So you may not technically be living there yet, but as long as you will be living there once the construction's done, then you can get your own building permits. But again, if you are the homeowner and you're going to take out your own permit, now you're responsible for all the building codes, and you're the one that we're going to come to and say, hey, this isn't right. You need to fix this or that. You got to kind of know what you're doing, I guess, a little bit. Or at least have somebody with you that does. You are, as a homeowner, required to sign a cautionary statement, and that's state law, which basically says that that you're going to potentially have to provide insurance and workers' comp for anybody who comes onto your property and does work. So if you're going to take out your own permit and have somebody else come in there and do the work and they fall down, they get hurt, you could be responsible for some of that. If you get and again, I don't want to generalize contractors, but if you get a contractor who, insists that you take out your own permit, there may be a reason why. They may not have their own insurance, they may not have their own workers' comp. There may be something that they're trying to hide. So you may want to find a different contractor. But a contractor who holds a dwelling contractor certification and a dwelling contractor qualifier certification can also be issued a permit. So you have your homeowner who lives at the property, or somebody who has these two state certifications. Now, the first certification there basically is talking about their knowledge of building codes and, do they know where the codes are and generally what the codes say. That qualifier certification, that deals with that insurance and the workers' comp section of it. So then that if somebody gets hurt working for them on your house, they have the insurance, they have the workers' comp that's going to protect that person. They can't come back and sue you for that then. And that's for the building permit. So electrical contractors, plumbing contractors, typically you're going to have to hire actual contractors to do electrical and plumbing work. Like I said, there is a little bit, that homeowners can do some replacement items for plumbing and electric themselves, but not really major electric and plumbing work here in West Allis. So how do you apply for permits? Again, each municipality has their own application forms and requirements for that. So the form's going to ask you just some basic info of, where is this property, who owns it, who's doing the work, what work are you doing, how much is this going to cost. Some other projects, they may need additional information. So if you are doing some major structural repairs on a house, we're going to need to see some structural calculations. One thing to keep in mind, Wisconsin state law basically tells you that you will never need an architect or a licensed engineer to stamp and sign plans for 1 and 2 family houses. So if you're doing something in a municipality around here, you won't get in here in West Allis, because we all know that rule pretty well. But if somebody, if you're in another municipality and they say, hey, you have to go to a professional engineer, do some structural calculations, they need to stamp it and sign it, they can't make you do that. So you can call them out on that. They can ask you for calculations. It just doesn't have to be stamped and signed by an engineer. But insulation calculations, a survey, if you're putting in a new furnace, they may need to see manufacturer's installation instructions. So there's sometimes some other information that's required to be submitted with those plans. Typically, a city's going to take anywhere from a handful of days up to about 10 business days to review that project. Sometimes there are corrections and changes that need to be made. Like I said before, you draw this up and then they say, hey, that wall's got to get moved by a foot. So you may have to go back, redraw it, or have somebody else redraw it for you, submit that in, have them take a look at it again. A lot of times it's basically just missing information. So when you are drawing up these plans, put as much information on those plans as you can. Even if you think, the inspector is going to know that, that this wall is made out of 2x4s with 1/2-inch drywall, put a little note on there somewhere that just lets them know that anyway, so that they're not guessing. Inspectors don't like to guess. They like to have that on those plans. So, but assuming everything's great on your plans and in your application, you submit that in, less than 2 weeks later, you get that all approved. Sometimes they'll have you pay a fee at the end. Sometimes you'll have to pay a fee at the beginning, and then you got your permit and you can get started. And that's sort of the general how to apply for permits section. So next up here is how do inspections work. So now you've got your permit. Now you're ready to start building. So, so why do we need inspections? You've got the permit. You've looked at plans. You already know that this is probably pretty good. Why do we need somebody to come out there? So inspectors are highly trained and certified men and women who are there to make sure that the work gets done correctly. Inspectors come in at critical times, important times during that project, during the construction, to make sure that things are done safely and up to code. It might seem like a hassle, yes, but the inspection process is set up to review the progress at major steps to make sure that there's not a problem. Basically we're going to come in there. If you're just doing like a little kitchen remodel or a bathroom remodel or something like that, we're going to have, the electric, the plumbing, the building inspectors all take a look at this before you drywall it. That's called rough inspections. And then again, once everything's done. And why don't we just look at it at the end when it's done? Well, again, we talk about, hey, you need to move that wall, or this outlet's not working correctly, or this plumbing's not hooked up correctly. We want to catch that before you drywall, before you paint, before you tile, before you do all those other expensive things. It's a lot easier to catch before any of that stuff happens. So, um, we want to get in there at the right time while it can still easily be fixed. Um, just like what does and doesn't require permits, each municipality will set up inspections a little bit differently based on the scope of the project and their staffing levels again. Like I said, when you are doing like a kitchen or bathroom remodel, you'll need an electrical inspection, a plumbing inspection, and a building inspection. Some municipalities, that's 3 people that are going to go in there and take a look at it, one for each trade. In other municipalities here in West Allis, we're trying to get to where you can just send one inspector in there who's certified in electric, plumbing, and building, and it makes it a little bit more convenient for the homeowner then. But different projects, they're going to have different things that we want to come in there and look at it. There might be times where, if you're doing a whole house remodel, you want to kind of get that second floor done first so that, maybe you guys can move into that second floor. So there might be a round of inspections upstairs, and then once you start working downstairs, then a round of inspections downstairs. So sometimes, it won't just be that once at rough and once at final. They may be in and out at different times if you phase a project like that. If there's something with foundations, if you're doing a deck out the back of your house, as soon as you get that hole dug, we want to take a look at that before you put concrete in there, because we want to see how deep that foundation is, make sure it's wide enough before you waste money and time putting concrete in there. It's a lot easier to dig a hole rather than dig out the concrete and then make that hole a little bit bigger. So again, we want to take a look at these things when it makes sense for us to look at them. So how are they set up? So when you get your permit, you're going to get an inspection card, or at least notified some way of these are the times that the inspector wants to come in there and take a look at it. And it'll have, how to reach the inspector. Some people will do, emails. Some municipalities have online portals where you can go into there and request inspections. Typically, though, a lot of people just call and schedule inspections, but each municipality is a little bit different on it. Depends on what kind of technology they have, and right now, again, with COVID, a lot of people are working from home. So at least here in West Allis, we actually have set up a email address that's right on our website that you can go right onto there and send that out, and that actually sends it out to all the inspectors that you're looking for an inspection on this property. And then that way too, if say that you were just looking for a plumbing inspection and my plumbing inspector is out sick for a week, everybody else is aware of it, so somebody else with a plumbing certification can step in there and fill in for them. So a lot of times, if you can get in touch with the inspector early in the morning, they can a lot of times do same day inspections, but typically most municipalities around here require 24-hour notice. For what I can pretty much tell you though is, just reach out to us as soon as you can. Even if it's, if it's on a Tuesday and you said, what, I think I'm going to be ready for you guys on Friday, just let us know. We can get you on the schedule. Friday morning comes, you say, hey, you know what, I got caught up doing something else. I couldn't do it. Can we push that back to Monday? That's not going to be a problem, but at least you were on the schedule then for that Friday. So keep in mind, the inspectors are mostly out of the office throughout the day. They'll be in the morning. They'll check their emails and voicemails and messages and return calls, but then they're mostly all out in the field doing their inspections and doing their jobs. So please be patient with them. If you call, in the middle of the day and you don't get an answer, don't just keep calling back. I've actually had that quick story for you. One time I was here at work and I went to lunch. As I was walking back in, the mayor was actually on his way out to lunch. And he said, hey, I just got a call from a contractor. He says he's left you 5 messages today. You're not getting back to him. I said, I don't know who this guy is. I haven't heard from him yet. I don't think he left me any messages. The mayor said, when he got back from lunch, he was going to forward me the info. And I got back in to my office, and sure enough, I had my phone was flashing, and he called me at 12:10, at 12:20, at 12:25, at 12:30, and at 12:40, and then he called the mayor at 12:45. So again, you got to give us some time. Just be patient with us. We do have other things that we're doing, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So what can I expect during an inspection? So the inspector is going to set up something of a short of a time frame for you. Usually, some municipalities, they will give you an exact time of, I plan to be there at 10 o'clock in the morning. Usually that's still plus or minus, maybe 15 minutes or a half an hour, because they may, run late from another inspection, or they may get done early at an earlier inspection. But some municipalities will give you like a set time of 10 o'clock. Some municipalities will just give you, what, I'll get there sometime in the morning. It all kind of depends again on staffing levels, how busy they are, and how much they can guarantee you an actual time. But typically, an inspector is going to arrive in a marked vehicle. He could have on a logoed shirt or a uniform. No matter what, though, they absolutely will have some sort of city identification on them. So if some guy shows up and doesn't have anything and says, "Hey, I'm here for your inspection," you have every right. Please, please, please ask them for some sort of identification. Don't let somebody into your house without them proving to you that they are with the city. Especially if you don't have an inspection scheduled. Somebody just shows up and says, "Hey, I'm with the city. We're doing some building inspections, and I have to go look at your basement for something." First off, that's pretty fishy to begin with, even if they did have city identification. But make sure that you get that identification from them. The length of the inspection, the timeline of it, that's going to depend on what you're doing. If they're just running in there quick to look at a toilet that you replaced, they're going to be in and out in 5 minutes. If you're remodeling the whole house, it could be a half hour to an hour. Sometimes the inspector will knock on the front door, but then offer to go around to the back door. Don't be alarmed by that. It's nothing shady. What we're trying to do there is, we don't want to track mud and stuff throughout your house. We may have just come from a muddy, dirty job site, and we don't want to go tracking all that stuff through your house, especially if it's something that's in your basement. If you replaced your furnace or your water heater down there, we have no reason to go walking through your living room and in your kitchen and everything. We'll meet you around back. We'll go right down the back steps, and we can be in and out much quicker and cleaner for you. The other side of that too is, a lot of times we don't want to be walking around in your house, where, if we walk through your living room and through your kitchen, and we notice, hey, this kitchen was recently remodeled, we don't want to get into that situation where we have to start asking you questions about stuff like that. So on the other side of that too, if the work is in the basement, the inspector should not really be walking around the rest of your house. If you replace just a furnace, the inspector really has no reason to go walking around upstairs or up on the second floor or going into bedrooms and stuff. So again, just stop them and just say, "Hey, you're here for the furnace." But keep in mind that, if there was work on say that they were remodeling a kitchen, they may have done some work to the electric panel, or where the plumbing pipes come down through the for the sink, and they get reconnected down into the basement. So there may be times where it's legitimate that we do need to go look into other areas, even if you weren't really doing work there. But again, kind of use your common sense on that stuff. So how should I prepare for an inspection? So make sure that the work area is clean and safe. Inspectors, I have known inspectors who will leave a job site if it's not safe. If you have a real rickety ladder that they need to use, or things like that. You should have the permit, the plans, the inspection record card, any other owner's manuals or documents and stuff, have that all right there ready for them. Please, take notes of what the inspectors are saying. If they're walking through saying, hey, this is bad, definitely take some notes on some of that type of stuff. And a lot of times the inspectors they'll let you know of things that aren't really violations for the work that you're doing, but just things that you might want to take care of. So when they do write up, if they do write up violations, you won't see some of those things on that violation report because it was just, some of their observances that, hey, you might want to fix this, or you might want to consider changing this out. If you have pets, keep them outside or in a locked room, or a room with the door closed. I know that your dog is the sweetest little dog ever, but you get a stranger in the house and they get excited, and you just never know what's going to happen. So, we'd love to meet them, but sometimes that's just not the best situation for dogs. Don't close up any work until it's inspected. So, if the inspector's on his way out, don't put up drywall if you're not at that step yet. Make sure the inspector can see everything that they're going to need to see. One of our big pet peeves is be ready to answer the door. So again, if you have that 10 o'clock inspection, and that your doorbell doesn't work, have a sign there that says, hey, knock on the door. Or we get that all the time where we'll knock on the door, we'll ring the doorbell, we don't get anything, so we leave because we figure something happened, you guys forgot, an emergency came up, whatever. We'll get a call back later on that says, hey, sorry, I was in the back bedroom taking a nap and I never heard you guys show up. Well, you got to be ready for us, basically. So be polite, courteous, and just relax. Remember that the inspectors are there to help you with that project. We're not there to get you. We're not there to find stuff wrong. We want to pass you. We want to make sure that this place is safe, and we're there. We're on your side. So, just relax. We're there to be your advocate. So after the inspection, so once all the inspectors approve your work, you can keep going. If the inspector does find something wrong, they give you time to correct it. They'll typically give you a written notice, but again, if you've been taking some notes, you may know what some of those things are that they're going to ask you to correct. A lot of times the inspector is going to want to come back after you fixed it and take a look at it. There are times for some few minor things that the inspector says, hey, fix this, let me know when it's fixed, or send me a picture, and then you're fine. Sorry. Keep in mind that the inspector can't design a project for you. So they can tell you what's wrong. They can try to help you out, give you some suggestions, but we cannot design it. There's actually a state law that says that we are not to act as your designer. So, you can't really say, okay, just tell me how to fix this and I'll do it that way and move on. We really can't do that. We can tell you the code. We can tell you a few of your options, but it's ultimately up to you or your contractor on how to actually fix it. But once the inspections are passed, depending on the scope of the project, everything's done. You may get an occupancy permit or permission to use a certain area or a building. You may just get the inspector sign off on the inspection card at the end that says everything's done. But either way, you're done. Congratulations. You're ready to enjoy your new remodeled area. So that's the inspection process. Now we'll get into what could go wrong. And I know we got about 10 minutes left here, so we'll zip through this pretty quick. Plus I'm starting to lose my voice. So we'll get through this what could go wrong scenario real quick here. All right, so what happens if I do some work without permits? It's probably, it happens every day. It's nothing new to us. And there's a number of reasons why people have to do work without permits. Maybe you didn't know that it needed a permit. Again, call before you start doing it. But Sometimes maybe somebody, started a project and you just finished it and you assume that a permit was out there. Whatever the reason is, if you do work without a permit and you get caught, here in West Allis, it could mean triple permit fees. Some places around are double permit fees. Milwaukee, I think, is quadruple permit fees. Not only that, but you may have to take off drywall, and start to expose, what was in that wall. Um, so that's if you get caught. Now, if you don't get caught, it's very possible nothing's going to happen for a little while. But again, when you go to sell that house, you have to sign that advisory statement at the end that says whether or not you did work without permits. The new homeowner, they may come in and say, hey, I'm going to make you go get these permits since you did this work. So again, you're ready to, sell this house. You found a buyer, and now you've got to go hire a contractor, take down finishes, open up walls, do all this other stuff. And instead, you just want to sell this house and move on with your life. It's a stressful time. I'm sure you've got a new house that you got to get moved into. So dealing with it at that point, probably not something that you want to do. So, and that's a bad scenario. The worst case scenario, though, is you did something and it had a serious flaw in it, and there's a fire or a structural collapse, and somebody gets hurt. So you don't want to have that happen. You don't want to have that on your conscience. It might not even be you or your family. It could be the next family that moves into that property who had no idea that you did this stuff without permits. You don't want to cause that, somebody to get hurt or to have major property damage. So it's just not worth it. Just get your permits. It's an easy process, trust me. And we're here to walk you through it and make it as simple as we can. So what happens if I disagree with an inspector, though? Inspectors are human, and we can make mistakes. I completely agree with you. We're trained, we're experts, but yeah, everybody makes mistakes. So the inspectors see something that's, that they think is a violation, you don't think so, or your contractor doesn't think so. You do have a few steps that you can take, but most importantly, stay calm. Don't take it personally. We're not out there to get you again. We're on your side. We want to make it safe. We don't have time to, say, hey, I didn't like this contractor from the last job, so this next one, I'm going to make them do a whole bunch of extra stuff. We really don't have time. We don't have memories, honestly, on a lot of that stuff either. So again, and when we do point out a violation, we're going to give you a code section on it. So and that's usually the first step. Just talk to the inspector, get that code section, read through it, see if sometimes there's alternatives to doing it one way, or exceptions in the code. Sometimes maybe the inspector was assuming the wrong thing. I told you before to put as much information on those plans as you can, and so maybe they were assuming something one way when they saw those plans because you didn't put information on there, and that's not really the case. You're not doing it that way. So just have that conversation with them. If it is they give you the code section, it's kind of a gray area. He's interpreting it one way, you're going the other way, or your contractor's going the other way. You can always ask them for another opinion from another inspector. You can talk to their supervisor. If it happens here in West Allis with one of the inspectors, you can come to me and we can kind of take a look at that together. And then there's also state building inspectors out there, who can also maybe step in and help out. If that inspector is absolutely standing their ground, they you've come to me, I'm siding with the inspector, there's no way around it. You're going to have to do this. And there's no compromise. You don't know what else to do. Every municipality by state law is required to have some sort of appeal process. So, you still can go through that and have, a third party. Basically, there's a committee then in West Allis here. It's the Board of Appeals, or the Municipal Review appeal board, something like that. Either way, there is a group out there that can listen to your side, listen to our side, and read the code and come to a decision on it. So you do have an appeal process. Now, what if you have problems with your contractor? You should definitely familiarize yourself with the agriculture, trade, and consumer protection laws that are in ATCP 110. Now, NARI is I mentioned earlier, I think I did this presentation for NARI. The NARI Home Show is coming up in a few weeks. The Spring Home Show, it's actually going to be live at State Fair Park. May 22nd at I think 3 p.m. I'm going to be doing another talk. It's going to be a little bit different from this, but I do work a lot with NARI, and so I did want to throw in a quick little plug for them here, because they are a great group. That's sort of the National Association of Remodeling Industry. And they have very good remodelers who are very, they love getting permits and inspections and following codes and doing things the right way. So we can't really recommend contractors or anything, but again, there are some really great groups out there that they can help you find a good reputable contractor if you need one. But NARI really helped to write the state law, and ATCP 110, it protects your homeowners from contractors who don't finish work, who take too long to do the work, if they misrepresent products or warranties, or another number of other shady practices. So again, definitely take a look at that section before you hire somebody. There is a state law that says that you have to have a contract in writing with somebody before they can come in there and do work on your property. So if you have those handshake agreements with somebody, or if they say that, this is how I do all my projects, just with a handshake, and, we don't need paperwork and stuff, they're probably trying to get out of, some state laws here. But prior to letting anyone work for you, again, get that contractor, get that contract in writing, find out what they're going to do, when they're going to have it done, how much you're getting paid or they're getting paid, when are you paying them, all that type of stuff. And then my last piece of advice there is, don't pay contractors until all the work's done and the inspections are all approved. All right, so some hidden consequences of some of these projects. Your tax assessment could go up. You're making an improvement on your property, and so your property is valued more, and so you may end up paying more in taxes each year. Sorry, but that's kind of how that works. You may need to upgrade other areas of your home that you weren't anticipating. So again, you're thinking about a kitchen remodel. You may need to add in more outlets in that kitchen. And when your electrical contractor traces that back down into the basement, maybe your electric panel is not big enough for that. Hopefully they would have caught that early on when they were bidding the project, but sometimes there are things that trigger other stuff. Same thing if you're doing just any sort of remodeling work. When you take off drywall, who knows what's behind some of those walls sometimes. So there may be things that your contractor couldn't have known about until they really started doing the work. So there's always surprises like that pop up. There's work by previous owners that could be figured out or that could be found. Maybe they ran some wiring into the kitchen that wasn't done quite right and never had permits, never had inspections, and all that's got to get replaced and brought up to current code. So again, there could be some things like that might pop up. And there could be, damage to other areas of your home or your exterior, especially if you're doing like a new roof on your house, or replacing windows. They may trample some of your landscaping. So some of those types of things to kind of keep in mind. All right, the last little section here is what questions do you have? And I'll actually jump here to the next slide here, my last slide of just, what questions do you have now? And if you do have questions in the future or tomorrow, later on tonight, you're thinking about this presentation a little bit more and something pops up and you say, oh, shoot, I wish I would have asked that. I've got my contact info up there. I'll leave this slide up for a while here. So you can give me a call, you can shoot me an email. even if the project's not in West Allis, I'd love to help you guys out. But if anybody's on here with any questions that I haven't covered, I'd love to hear them now.
Thanks, Ed. If anyone has any questions, you can drop them in the chat box. Just a few reminders that we will be posting this recording to YouTube tomorrow, so you can check that out on the city's YouTube channel. We'll also be sending an email to all attendees with a survey. So if you could take that survey and tell us what you thought of tonight's webinar, we would really appreciate it. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so you have Ed's contact information there. And I think we'll wrap it up for the night. Thank you, Ed. And thank you everyone for joining us. Oh, we have a hand raised from Kathy Fletcher. Yes, one moment, Kathy. Kathy, you should be able to unmute and throw your question out to us if you'd like to. Oh, we lost Kathy. Maybe she'll follow up via email. Again, thanks everyone and have a good night.